That was it. That was the moment that Jews should sound an alarm bell, because they came out of the rocks. And he's having dinner with Nick Fuentes, a Nazi, and Kanye West is writing anti-Semitic lyrics. My grandchildren are texting me saying, you should see what Kanye West is saying. This is what the kids are reading. The Jews are I don't want to say it, all the tropes that you all know. Okay, so that's what the high school kids and the junior high school kids are hearing. And we've got a steady drumbeat of anti-Jewish rhetoric and actions going on in this country right now, and we have to pay attention to it. So I have my parents were both immigrants from Poland and Ukraine, and they both said the same thing to my brother and I over and over and over again. Have your passport in order and pick your next country. I'll do it again. Have your passport in order and pick your next country. So I don't want to sound like an alarmist, but I do want to sound like a realist. And I'm an attorney, and so I am accustomed to preparing for the worst case scenario. And you can't prepare for the worst case scenario if you don't identify it. And I'm going to identify it. We're in trouble here. This is not a good time to be a Jew in America, and it's getting worse every day. And we're in a little bubble here. You know, we only have a few guys being white power people on the freeway overpasses, but our kids are starting to get bullied in school because they're Jewish. We have problems being Jews in this country today. And what is going to happen if a far-right candidate wins the Republican presidency, the nomination, and then becomes president? And the answer is, it's going to be horrible to be Jews here. When does a country change? That's when a country will change. And I always think of the Jews as the canary in the coal mine. You know, well, if you have major political persons promoting anti-Semitic rhetoric, that leads to anti-Semitic actions, and it is already. So we got a problem. And I majored in political science and history, and I've been a lawyer for a long time, and I pay a lot of attention to governments. I spent my whole life working in and out of government, and I know fascism when I see it, and what I see is the development of fascism in this country day by day by day by day. And democracy doesn't die in a day, it dies in increments, and we're watching that happen. So, what do? We take a look. What I see happening is punitive laws being passed against minorities in red states over and over and over again. And obviously the abortion thing that's going on has subjugated women, and that's consistent with a school of thought in this country that women should be subordinate to men, but it's not consistent with civil liberties and Jewish values at this point. So it's something to be alarmed about. We have book burnings, in essence. They don't burn them, they just ban them. And it's so easy to do in so many states. All you have to do is say, I want that book banned. And you don't even have to have read the book. Okay? The only good news that came out of this was that someone with some foresight and guts got the Bible banned in a school district in Utah because of sex and violence. Okay. But that upset the Utah school board people. So they're trying to find a way around it, but they can't. Because by their definition of pornographic, the Bible falls right square within it. Now they're going to go for the Book of Mormon, so we'll see what happens. But the fact is that you've got state after state after state that is banning books. In the 1920s, we had what we called the Scopes trial, the monkey trial. Tennessee had passed a law in the 20s prohibiting the teaching of evolution. And a science teacher named Henry Scopes said, I'm going to teach evolution. He did. He got arrested. It was the trial of the century. And he was convicted but given a very small fine. And that was the end of those laws for then. We're right back where we were 100 years ago. The kinds of laws that are being passed now, especially against women and abortion, are draconian. And when we can pass a law against women or pass a law against lesbians or gays or trans, it's us too. We're an identifiable minority. Okay. And so, The one that got me the most, I think, was Florida when they came out with a change in their curriculum for black studies that said that the slaves benefited from being slaves because they learned vocations. Okay, that was about it for me. So, what does all this mean? It means that we might start looking at our next country. I have an advantage in a way. I'm old enough to remember the end of World War II, the liberation of the concentration camps, the beginning of Israel. I was young, but there were lots of Holocaust survivors in the community that I grew up in and in my temple, and there were no secrets. I knew all this stuff. Well, I had a good friend in high school named Frank Urey. He lives in LA now, and we're still friends, and we still see each other. Frank's parents were from Germany, and they left Germany in 1935, and they were able to get out with all their possessions. And so when they came to America, it wasn't hard for them to learn English. They were multilingual anyway, and they had money and assets, and they made a good life. Frank's uncle, his father's brother, didn't leave until after Kristallnacht in 1938. He was lucky to get out, and he got out with nothing, absolutely nothing. So he arrived in the U.S. penniless. After Kristallnacht, and by 1940, 39, 40, Jews didn't get out. And the rest is history. So that leaves a question. When is it time to leave? And we have to honestly ask ourselves that. And we can work backwards and reverse engineer it, but in our minds, let's not be stupid. Let's be alert. Let's pay attention to this and ask yourselves, when is it time to leave? I told Jan 6 years ago that the first time that there was legislation passed that was discriminatory against a minority, I wanted to leave. And we argued over that for years. Obviously, I didn't leave. Okay. But I don't feel that way right now. So I've made a list of countries, and I'll share them with you. What's the next country? And what you might be thinking about, if you think in those terms, at least start thinking about it. Okay. And the next country could be Canada or New Zealand, but it doesn't work for me because I'm too old to get on the healthcare systems. These are considerations. What are the tax issues? What kind of, how far does the dollar go in a given country? What's the standard of living? Is it democratic? How long has it been democratic? What's the literacy rate? Is there a Jewish community? Is it viable? Can you get your money out of the United States, and can you buy property in this other country? These are all the kinds of considerations that we should be thinking about. You don't have to go do it, but you have to understand that this is a problem and we should be prepared. I strongly believe that. So using that criteria, I came up with a list of 6 countries. Canada and New Zealand were tops on my list, but I can't get health care there, and so I'm not going. Those are not for me, but they could be for younger people. Another country that is worth considering is Israel, because if we're Jewish, we get to go there automatically and we get automatic citizenship. The problem is that Israel's a mess right now. And so would you really want to go live in Israel? And that's another issue. But if the answer is yes, we're in. We can automatically get in. And even if our spouses are not Jewish, they are also granted citizenship, just so you know. Okay, it's there. Okay, the other 3 countries that I have picked are Costa Rica, Uruguay, and Portugal. Portugal is the 3rd of those, although it has a lot going for it and has a fantastic Jewish community in Porto and in Lisbon. It meets all the criteria. Uruguay is the most liberal country in the world. It has a large Jewish community. The demographics are 3 million people in the country, 1.6 million in Montevideo, the capital, and a Jewish population of 25,000. And that parallels New Orleans, which is 1.6 million and 25,000 Jews. And it's a fantastic Jewish community. The country is democratic, 100% literacy rate, cradle-to-grave health care, which we're eligible for immediately, and it's a good country. Okay, and then there's Costa Rica. Costa Rica is the Switzerland of the Middle East. It's, and by the way, Uruguay, in Uruguay, there's complete separation of church and state. Christmas is not a holiday in Uruguay. Okay, the president doesn't have a security detail. He drives a Volkswagen Beetle. He eats on the street with the people, and he lives in an $800 a month apartment. Okay, that's Uruguay. It has the best beaches in South America too, for what it's worth. And then there's Costa Rica, which meets all the criteria that Uruguay has, except it's closer to the United States. More people speak English, and the cost of living is lower than in Uruguay. So these are countries that you might take a look at if you even start thinking about this. Say again? Does Costa Rica have a Jewish community? Oh, that's a good question. I was planning to go to Uruguay in January with my daughter and some friends just to check it out. And the question is, could I live here? And the reason was that I thought Costa Rica did not have a good Jewish community, or at least not one that I could identify with. I know they have Chabad, but I wasn't aware of anything else. And I recently learned, like a week ago, that there's an old Ashkenazic temple in San Jose, Costa Rica, that, well, not old, but say at least 40 years old, which has services in Hebrew, English, and Spanish. A lot of American expats belong to this community. It's a conservative temple, but they have Reform members and they have Orthodox members because every Ashkenazic Jew wants to go to that temple. It's a thriving community. It's at least 3,000 people in San Jose. That's contrasted to 25,000 in Montevideo, Uruguay. But the Jewish community is good enough in San Jose, Costa Rica, that all of us could live there happily and identify with a Jewish community. So I'm going to Costa Rica instead of Uruguay. I'll let you know what I think. The very first stop I'm making is to this temple, and I want to see how it is. Because if I can't be Jewish, my kind of Judaism, I don't want to live there. I'll find a different place. So that's my pitch. I think it's important that we recognize that there is a promised land and that it changes. It's not always the same. Okay, that's what I want to say. Thank you for listening. Hope that made sense. Yeah. I'm sorry? Food for discussion later at the outing. Yeah. I don't want to be Frank's uncle, and I don't want to be the guy who didn't leave when Frank's uncle left. So it doesn't mean we have to get scared and run away and be intimidated. It means we have to pay attention. That's all it means. Don't have our eyes closed. And we can't go by political labels anymore. We're past that. The question to me is, I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, a Green Party, are you anti-Semitic or anti-any minority? And if you are, that's my red flag. That's enough. Doesn't matter what your label is. It matters what your behavior is. So, okay. Okay, so we'll continue with the Mishiberach, and the version that we have in the book has a picture of healing at the very bottom of the page. And let's read together. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. And let me name them. And we have many in our congregation. It ranges from not so good to not good. And so we need to take these people into our hearts. Jerome Becker, Catherine Adele Celentano, Robin Cohn, Marty Glenn, Diana Heller, John William Hillebrecht, Jeffrey Kern, Nitzan Kolakant and Panina Kolakant, Barbara and Chip Kurtzman, Kit Levine, Wendy Liris, Bernadette Maloney, Jan Murray, Sharon Maslow, Arlene McDonald, Rick Moss, Sylvia Ramsdell, Frida Russell, Jane Sachs, Toby Shearer, Margaret Schmidt, Elliot Schwartz, Cheryl Shellub, John Sitters, Elizabeth Spencer, Aaron Steck, William Vinay, Ellen Weingarten, and Jackie Zucker. A lot of people, but some of these are good news, really. Jerome Becker's on the list. He had surgery. The surgery was successful, so he's recovering. Jackie Zucker broke her foot. She's healing. She'll be okay. By contrast, and Jane Sachs broke her pelvis. She's in Templeton at the Twin Cities Hospital. She could use visitors. No?
Across the street at rehab.
Oh, in rehab now? Okay. In rehab, she can use visitors or a card or two. Diana Heller can use visitors. She's at Twin Cities, I believe. Yes? Okay. So the people on the list are in different places in their sickness or recovery, but they are not here and they need our prayers. So, and if you have any names at all, please feel free to say them now. People who need our prayers. Okay. 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 Let's say together, Mishihi beirach avotenu makur habracha laimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishihi beirach mimotenu Makor habracha lahavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalima, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We can, on the next page is a modern Aleinu, and I think we can read this together. And then all that has divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power, and then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind, and then both men and women will be gentle, and then both men and women will be strong, and then no person will be subject to another's will, and then all will be rich and free and varied, and then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many, and then all will equally share in the earth's abundance, and then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old, and then all will nourish the young, and then all will cherish life's creatures, and then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth, and then everywhere will be called Eden once again. The next prayer in the service is the mourner's cottage, and we can't say that because we don't have a minyan, but I would like to remember the Yortzites for today. Sam Simon, father of Sandy Kawano, Kalina Block, aunt of Linda Pryor, Arnold Kaplan, father of Lauren Kaplan, and Seema Adelson, grandmother of Brenda Ernst. And we take into our heart all those who have a Yortzeit on this day. Okay. And now, this is a nice poem. It's a few pages away, and it's called Take Us to the Mountain. It's got a picture of a sunset over mountains on it. And let's read this responsively. I'll read the first paragraph, and then you read the second. Lead us to the river. The title is Take Us to the Mountain. Lead us to the river to cast our sins upon the waters. The world may go mad. We must stay sane.
Take us to the mountain to cast our eyes toward the heavens. The world may go mad. We must not.
God is my light and my refuge secure. Whom shall I fear?
Atheism calling to consume the heart of justice, to consume the heart of mercy, to challenge our lives and our ideals.
God is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?
Love too has come calling to enliven our heart of righteousness, to
We need not be prophets of doom to see that anger stalks the night and threatens our days. Bringing kindness as our message and tikkun olam as the work of our hands. Do you folks have the Siddur with you? This one? Okay. Turn to page 321 and let's do a Don Olam. Any version you like, Cindy. Okay. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, V'teren Kol Yitzir Nivrach, Leis Nasa Behel, Efsa Kol Azai Melech, Shamo Nikra, V'Yaharei, Kiklot HaKol, Levado Yimlok Nora, V'hu Hoya, V'hu Havel, V'hu Yiyah, B'tifara, V'hu Ehad, V'yein Sheni, Laham Shilo, Lahabira, V'li Reshit, V'li Tachlit, V'lo V'ham Yisra, V'hu Eli, V'hai Goali, V'tzutev li B'yesara, V'hu Nisi Umanos li, Manas Kosi, Bayom Ekra, V'yado Afkirui, V'yisham V'ya'ira, V'yimruhi Gaviyati, Adonai li, V'lo ira. Good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom. Okay. Let's join me for the Kaddish.